The kingdom would one day whisper that the Alpha King had never feared an enemy. He had crushed rebellions before they formed, broken rival alphas with his bare hands, turned battlefields into graveyards that sang his name in blood. But on the night his son was born, he feared something he could not kill. The fortress of black stone throbbed with celebration. War drums pounded against the mountains like a second heartbeat. Firelight leapt across towering banners stitched with the sigil of the wolf, casting monstrous shadows that danced along the walls. The scent of iron, smoke, and spiced wine thickened the air. Their king had returned undefeated from his final campaign. And now the gods had granted him an heir. When the Luna's first cry of labor tore through the halls, the throne room erupted. Warriors slammed fists against chests. Elders lifted their faces toward the rising moon in reverence. A prince born beneath a swelling silver sky was no accident. It was prophecy. Hours later, celebration curdled into silence. The royal chamber flickered with candlelight. Melted wax bled down brass holders. The air smelled of sweat and crushed herbs. The newborn's cry pierced the room, fierce, indignant, powerful. Strong lungs. Strong life. The healer, hands trembling despite decades of battle surgery and broken bones, lifted the child toward the flame. Silver eyes blinked open. Unclouded. Luminous. But they did not move. The healer shifted closer to the fire. Waved a hand slowly before the infant's face. Nothing. No flinch. No tracking. No awareness. The healer swallowed. My king, his voice cracked under the weight of it. He does not respond to light. The sentence did not echo. It fell like an executioner's blade. The Luna, pale and shaking against blood-stained sheets, reached for her son with trembling arms. Tears slid into her hairline. He is strong, she breathed desperately. He will learn the world in other ways. He will adapt. The king stood at the foot of the bed, armor still strapped across his chest, dried enemy blood dark against steel. Firelight carved harsh lines into his scarred face. His shadow swallowed half the chamber. In his kingdom, weakness was not pitied. It was hunted. A blind alpha would not inspire loyalty. He would inspire challenge. And challenge meant war. Leave us. The command was quiet. No one dared hesitate. When the chamber doors closed, the silence felt suffocating. He approached the bed slowly. Studied the child as though assessing a weapon for flaw. The infant's tiny hand flexed blindly, then curled around the king's finger with startling strength. Firm. Trusting. Alive. For the briefest heartbeat, the king's breath changed. His thumb shifted, almost protective. Almost. Then the moment hardened. By dawn, the drums had stopped. No horns announced a prince. No messenger rode to neighboring packs. Instead, beneath a sky washed pale with reluctant morning light, a single cloaked guard rode beyond the kingdom's gates. No escort. No witness. Only a carefully wrapped bundle held close against cold steel armor. The border forest loomed ancient and forbidden, its towering trees blotting out the growing sun. Mist coiled low across the roots like restless spirits. The guard dismounted. His jaw clenched. He did not unwrap the child fully. He did not look long. He placed the bundle beneath the shelter of a gnarled tree whose roots clawed deep into the earth. For a moment, nothing moved. No cry came. The guard stepped back quickly as though afraid he might change his mind, then mounted and rode hard toward the safety of stone walls and lies. Silence returned. Wind shifted through branches. The baby's small chest rose. Fell. He did not cry. He listened. To the rustle of leaves 3 trees away. To the distant prowl of something heavy in the brush. To the heartbeat of the forest itself. Back inside the fortress, the Alpha King stood before his court. His face was carved from stone. The heir was born without breath, he declared evenly. The gods have reclaimed him. The Luna's scream tore through the hall, raw, animal, breaking. But the lie stood. Murmurs of sorrow swept the chamber like ritual smoke. Beyond the stone walls, beneath silver light filtering through towering branches, the abandoned prince inhaled the wild air of exile. The forest was not empty. Something moved in the shadows. And high above the treetops, the moon was watching. Its silver glow deepened, pouring through the lattice of branches until the forest floor shimmered like water. Mist shifted. Leaves whispered. Something moved. Not predator. Not prey. She stepped from the undergrowth without sound, tall, scarred, her dark hair braided tight against a face carved by old battles. The scent of iron clung faintly to her, though no fresh blood marked her skin. A warrior once. Cast out. Forgotten. The rogue she-wolf tilted her head. She had heard no cry. Only breath. Only the strange stillness where fear should have been. She crouched beside the bundle, rough fingers hesitating before peeling back the cloth. The infant lay quiet, silver eyes open, unfocused, yet unafraid. He turned his head toward her. Not toward her movement. Toward her heartbeat. Her pulse stumbled. Slowly, she waved her hand before his face. Nothing. A curse left her under her breath. But the child's fingers lifted, brushing the air, then catching a loose strand of her braid with uncanny precision. She froze. He can't see, she murmured. The baby's mouth curved, not quite a smile, not quite instinct. Recognition. Around them, the forest shifted again. A low growl rolled somewhere distant. Watching. Weighing. The rogue glanced toward the sound, then back at the child. Rejected, she said softly, understanding too easily. Like me. The moonlight brightened, touching the infant's pale lashes. A wind stirred, circling, protective. Choice settled into her bones. She gathered him into her arms. You will not die here. And so the forest became cradle instead of grave. Years passed beneath canopies of green and silver. The boy did not grow soft. He grew quiet. He learned the language of leaves before he learned words. The rhythm of rain against bark. The tremor of paws pressing earth 20 strides away. By 5 winters, he could distinguish her footsteps from a deer's at twice the distance. By 7, he could hear the uneven stutter in a liar's chest. By 10, he could sit perfectly still and map the forest in his mind, each tree, each hollow, each living pulse threading through soil. Blind, they would have called him. But he did not move like the blind. He moved like something listening to truths others missed. When she sparred with him, he did not track her shadow. He tracked breath. When she tested him with silence, he found her by the shift of weight in moss. Again, she would command, circling. He would turn before she struck. Not fast. Certain. His world was not darkness. It was vibration. It was rhythm. It was the fragile betrayal hidden in a heartbeat before a blade moved. Exile hardened him. Hunger sharpened him. Loneliness carved patience into his bones. And beneath every rising moon, silver light touched his unseeing eyes. Not as mockery. As promise. The kingdom had abandoned a weakness. The forest was raising something else. Years folded into muscle and memory. The boy grew taller, lean with controlled strength, movements measured, never wasted. Scars mapped his forearms from training blades. Calluses hardened his palms. He laughed rarely, but when he did, it came low and surprised, like a sound rediscovered. On the night everything shifted, the air felt wrong. He stilled mid-step. Wind moved east to west. Owls held their breath. Far beyond their forest's edge, past stone markers swallowed by moss hooves struck earth in disciplined rhythm. Not deer. Not wanderers. Riders. He turned his face slightly. 4 heartbeats. 2 steady. 1 anxious. 1 cruel. The kingdom, he said quietly. The rogue she-wolf froze across the clearing. She had not heard them yet. But she trusted him. They moved without panic. She extinguished their fire with a sweep of dirt. He erased footprints with a branch dragged backward. They retreated into denser growth, melting into shadow. The riders did not stop at the border. They crossed. Steel shifted. Leather creaked. The anxious heartbeat fluttered faster. Scouts. Searching. For what? The boy knelt, pressing his fingers lightly to the soil. Vibrations traveled through root and stone. One rider dismounted. A blade slid free, metal whispering against sheath. They're tracking old scent, he murmured. Not prey. Memory. The rogue's jaw tightened. It had been years. Years since she had fled the fortress in disgrace. Years since she had torn her crest from her armor and thrown it at the feet of a king who called mercy weakness. They shouldn't be this far out, she said. A pause. Then. A fifth heartbeat. Faint. Familiar. His breath changed. Not fear. Recognition without sight. The fifth rider stayed back. Older. Controlled. Scarred lungs, breath pulling slightly heavier on the left side. The boy rose slowly. I know that one. The words unsettled even him. He stepped forward before she could stop him. Out of shadow. Into filtered moonlight. The riders reined hard. Steel lifted. The fifth man dismounted last. Silence stretched. The boy faced them unflinching, silver eyes open to darkness. Remove your helmets, he said calmly. Mockery flickered among them. Then the fifth man obeyed. Metal came free. A scar cut across his cheek, old blade work. The boy inhaled once. You carried me, he said. The man went rigid. You left me beneath a tree with roots like claws. The anxious heartbeat spiked violently. The rogue's hand went to her dagger. The forest seemed to lean closer. The guard's voice rasped. That child died. No, the boy replied, steady as stone. He listened. Silence fractured. The truth stood between them, undeniable, breathing. The heir had not died. He had endured. And now the kingdom's lie had a pulse. The forest held its breath. Steel hovered in uncertain hands. The anxious rider's heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. The cruel one shifted first, weight angling forward, fingers tightening around his hilt. This is madness, he spat. A blind stray claiming royal blood. The word stray struck the air. The boy did not flinch. But the rogue did. She stepped from the trees fully now, moonlight revealing the old crest scar burned into her shoulder, the mark of disgrace. Recognition rippled through the riders. Traitor, one muttered. Her lip curled. Cowards. The scarred guard, the one who had left him beneath the tree, stared as though witnessing a ghost claw out of earth. It cannot be, he said hoarsely. The king buried a son. No, the boy replied quietly. He buried his fear. A blade flashed. Not toward the rogue. Toward him. He moved before metal finished singing. Not by sight, by breath. By the hitch in the attacker's chest before commitment. By the tremor in soil as boots drove forward. He pivoted, precise. The blade cut empty air. His hand struck the rider's wrist. Bone cracked. Steel fell. Gasps split the clearing. The cruel rider lunged next, furious now. Faster. Sloppier. The boy tilted his head, listening, tracking muscle tension, tracking heartbeat escalation, tracking the rush of blood before swing. He stepped inside the arc. Elbow to throat. Knee to ribs. The rider collapsed, choking into leaves. Silence returned, heavier than before. 4 heartbeats. No. 5. His own had not quickened. The guard staggered back a step. Monster, someone whispered. The word hung differently than stray. The boy faced them squarely, silver eyes unseeing yet unyielding. I asked you to remove your helmets, he said. Not draw your blades. Humiliation burned through the riders, not from defeat alone, but from being undone by what they had been taught to pity. The anxious one dropped his gaze. You were weak, he said, as if repeating doctrine. The pack cannot follow weakness. The rogue's laugh was sharp as flint. You followed a lie. Hooves shifted nervously behind them. Even the horses sensed it, the fracture in certainty. From the distance, faint, but unmistakable, a horn sounded. Not from the riders. From the direction of the kingdom. A recall. Or a warning. The scarred guard's breathing grew heavier. Decision warred across his face. If this reaches the court, he murmured. It will, the boy said calmly. The cruel rider struggled to his knees, rage swallowing sense. You think the king will kneel because you survived? The boy's jaw tightened slightly. No, he answered. He will hunt. There it was. The shift. This was no reunion. No redemption. This was threat. The heir's survival was not miracle. It was insult. The guard mounted abruptly. We report nothing, he ordered. You saw nothing. This forest remains empty. Fear, thick and immediate. Because if the king learned the truth from another mouth, punishment would not be merciful. The riders hesitated only a breath longer before retreating, gathering their wounded, vanishing between trees in fractured pride. Silence swallowed their departure. The rogue turned to him slowly. They will come back, she said. Yes. More of them. Yes. The distant horn echoed again. Longer this time. Summoning. The boy lifted his face toward the direction of stone walls he had never seen. They rejected me once, he said, voice steady as winter ground. Next time. His fingers curled at his sides. They will know what they abandoned. Above them, the moon slipped from behind a cloud. Watching. The horn did not fade this time. It multiplied. 1 became 3. 3 became many. The sound rolled across the mountains like a gathering storm. The rogue's posture shifted instantly, no longer guardian, but warrior. That isn't a patrol recall, she said. The boy tilted his head. Far beyond the forest's edge, past stone, past banners, the earth trembled. Not horses. Too heavy. Too many. Metal clashed in disciplined rhythm. Shields locking. Spears striking in unison. The vibration traveled through root and soil, into his bare feet. An army. But not moving outward. Moving inward. Toward the kingdom. Smoke reached them next, thin at first, then thickening. Not forest smoke. Oil. Burning pitch. The rogue's breath stilled. They're breaching the outer gates. A distant roar followed, not wolf. Human. War cries layered with the sharp crack of splintering wood. The boy's fingers pressed into the ground. He mapped it as it unfolded, chaos spreading through stone corridors he had never walked. Screams scattering like birds. The thunder of something enormous battering iron. The western wall has fallen, he said quietly. She stared at him. He could hear command structures collapsing. Hear panic rise in uneven pulses. Hear the sudden, violent silence where heartbeats ceased all at once. This was no border skirmish. This was invasion. Another horn cut through, deeper, foreign. The rogue swore under her breath. The Iron Fang. The name moved like poison. Rival pack. Exiled for brutality. Waiting years for weakness. They smelled fracture, she said. The boy rose slowly. In the distance, a new vibration entered the field, singular. Powerful. Controlled. A heartbeat he did not know. But one that carried authority sharpened by cruelty. The invading Alpha. Closer now. Inside the gates. Flames climbed higher, smoke smearing the sky. The moon dimmed behind it, blurred but unblinking. The rogue grabbed her blade. Instinct pulled her toward battle, toward the home that had cast her out. They will slaughter everyone, she said. Conflict warred in her voice. The boy stood still. Listening. Beneath the chaos, beneath the screams and steel, another rhythm pulsed. Familiar. Scarred lungs. Heavier on the left side. The guard. Alive. Fighting. And somewhere deeper. Another heartbeat. Measured. Unyielding. The king. Surrounded. Outnumbered. For the first time in his reign, uncertain. The boy exhaled slowly. They are not attacking because of me, he said. No, the rogue replied grimly. They are attacking because your father taught the world that mercy is weakness. Another crash shook the ground. Closer now. The invasion was not stopping at walls. It was spreading. The rogue looked at him, truly looked at the calm carved into his face. "You owe them nothing," she said. The boy turned toward the burning horizon he could not see. "I know." A scream carried through the wind, young. Terrified. Not soldier. Civilian. His jaw tightened. Silence stretched between them. Choice forming. The kingdom that abandoned him was bleeding. The enemy that came would not stop with a fallen king. They would claim everything. The rogue's grip tightened around her sword. "If we move," she said, "there is no returning to shadow." The boy stepped forward. Toward the tremor. Toward the fire. "I was never meant for shadow." Another explosion of splintering stone echoed across the valley. And as the invading Alpha's heartbeat grew louder within the collapsing fortress, the abandoned prince began walking home. But home no longer existed. Smoke choked the horizon. Ash rained from the sky like frozen fire. The forest trembled under the roar of battle, but inside him, a different storm raged: confusion, anger, and something darker, heavier. He had been hidden, discarded, abandoned. Now he was here, at the gates of a kingdom that called him heir yet had never known him. He did not run. He did not hesitate. He moved with the silence of a shadow-stalking memory. Every step measured, every heartbeat mapped, every vibration a thread he could follow. The rogue she-wolf flanked him, her eyes sharp, her breath steady, the only anchor in a world gone mad. Through the haze, he felt it first, the pulse of fear, of control, of dominance, radiating from the Alpha commanding the invasion. His father's son, lost in darkness, but not yet broken. Flames painted the sky orange and red. Smoke and fire masked the chaos, but he saw deeper. He sensed the soldiers' staggered coordination, the slight hesitation of leaders who underestimated a boy raised by shadows. Every step, every strike of metal, every cry of pain became a rhythm he could read. He entered the fortress. The walls were breached, the halls strewn with shattered wood and blood. The air was thick with smoke, scent of fear, iron, and death. And then he heard it, the Alpha King's heartbeat, steady, proud, scarred by age and battles, surrounded by enemies, trapped. The boy's fists clenched. Blind he might be, but he had senses beyond sight. He could feel the vibrations of the collapsing floorboards, the shift of weight in soldiers' boots, the tremor of every soul within reach. He moved faster than thought, weaving between chaos, dodging blows that no human eye could track, striking with precision, with instinct, with the fury of a life denied. The rogue she-wolf fought at his side, her blades a blur. Yet he was not just fighting with her. He was becoming something more. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat around him became part of him. The forest, the exile, the endless silent training, all of it had led to this. Then came the moment. He stood at the foot of his father, eyes unseeing but awareness total. The invading Alpha advanced, arrogant, confident in victory. But the boy moved like the storm itself, fluid, silent, unstoppable. In a heartbeat, he disarmed the Alpha, forced him to his knees, every strike measured, every shift of energy anticipating the next. The fortress was quiet. The fire still roared, but the Alpha King's enemies lay scattered, stunned, broken by the force of someone they had never imagined, the boy who had survived, the child they had called weak. He knelt beside his father, placing a hand, small but unyielding, on the scarred king's shoulder. The Alpha King's eyes met his silver ones, recognition sparking, a mix of fear, awe, and regret. The rogue she-wolf stepped back, watching him rise. No longer the hidden, abandoned boy. He had become the storm, the force the kingdom had tried to erase but could never contain. And as the moon broke free of clouds, casting silver across the devastation, he understood, darkness had awakened within him. Not to destroy, but to transform. The heir was no longer lost. He was inevitable. The fortress lay in ruin. Smoke curled like serpents into the sky. The echoes of battle, screams, splintered wood, the clatter of armor faded into tense silence. Only the low thrum of remaining heartbeats vibrated through the broken stone. The boy stepped forward, silver eyes gleaming beneath the moonlight filtering through shattered walls. Every nerve sang with awareness, every muscle primed. The rogue she-wolf stayed behind him, silent and steady, a shadow within his shadow. She had trained him for this, but she knew this was no longer about survival. This was reclamation. The Alpha King's guards had either fled or fallen. Only one remained, the invader's champion, the rival Alpha whose arrogance had brought fire and death to the gates. He stood at the main hall's threshold, armor scratched, blade smeared with ashen blood, and a sneer stretched across his cruel face. "You are but a child," he spat. "A blind nothing. You cannot stop me." The boy tilted his head, listening. Every heartbeat around him, foe and father, rogue and ally, became a map of motion. He smelled fear beneath pride. He sensed hesitation beneath anger. And he knew the truth the invader could not see. Instinct sharpened by years of exile was a weapon no blade could counter. Steel clashed first. Not in a flurry, but with precision, a deliberate dance. The invader struck with brute force, each swing designed to kill, to intimidate. The boy sidestepped, guided by vibrations through stone and air, every movement fluid, every strike anticipating the next. His fists, elbows, knees, weapons forged from survival and training, not royal instruction. The rogue she-wolf intervened when shadows threatened to engulf him, but he motioned her back. This duel was his. It had always been his. The invader growled, lunged, and met the boy's calm, unwavering counter. They moved through the halls like storms colliding, steel rang against steel, sparks dancing against scorched stone. The boy's silver eyes, unseeing to the world but seeing everything, tracked every imperfection in the opponent's form. Every breath, every subtle shift in weight, every heartbeat stutter revealed weakness. Then it came, the opening. The invader overextended, arrogance blinding him. The boy twisted, using the enemy's momentum, sending him crashing into rubble. He disarmed him in one fluid motion, pressing the tip of his own blade to the rival Alpha's throat. The hall fell silent, save for ragged breathing and the distant roar of burning fire. "Yield," the boy said quietly. "Not a threat. A declaration. You will not harm my kingdom. You will not harm my people." The invader stared, face pale beneath grime. Pride, disbelief, and fear warred in his expression. Finally, he sank to his knees, broken by a force he could neither see nor understand. The Alpha King, standing behind the boy, his chest rising and falling in exhausted rhythm, finally spoke. His voice was raw but certain. "So this is my heir." Silver eyes met scarred ones, and in that instant, the kingdom's betrayal, the forest's exile, the darkness awakened within him, all aligned. He lowered his blade, but the power he carried, the inevitability, remained. He had returned. He had conquered. The duel was over. The kingdom would never doubt him again. The moon rose high, bathing the ruin in silver light, and the air stood unbowed, unbroken, unstoppable. The fire that had consumed the fortress flickered low, casting long, trembling shadows across shattered stone. Smoke still drifted in thick curls, carrying the scent of charred timber and iron, but the kingdom, or what remained of it, was listening. Waiting. Watching. He turned slowly, silver eyes sweeping over the remnants of walls that once symbolized power and pride, a fortress that had rejected him at birth. Every scar on the stones, every splinter of timber, every fallen banner now bore witness. He had survived, he had endured, and he had returned. The rogue she-wolf stepped beside him, her gaze steady, pride burning quietly behind the scars of exile. "It is yours," she said softly. "The kingdom, the pack, they belong to you now." He shook his head slightly, letting the smoke and moonlight play over his face. "It is not mine," he murmured. "It is ours. Those who were loyal, those who were forgotten, those who waited in shadow, they are my strength. I am the heir, yes, but I am also their voice." Word spread quickly through the surviving warriors and citizens. From the shattered gates to the distant villages, whispers traveled. The boy who had been left to die had returned. The child who could not see had become the Alpha King's heir in ways no one could have imagined. Murmurs grew to awe, or to reverence. Even the forest seemed to bow under the weight of his presence, the wind carrying news of a king who had been forged in exile and shadow. Inside the throne hall, rebuilt over weeks with sweat, determination, and fire, the boy, now grown into the quiet, unshakable man of prophecy, stood before the remnants of the council. They knelt, some trembling, some in disbelief, but all in respect. The rogue she-wolf watched from the side, silent sentinel of a kingdom reborn. He placed a hand on the throne, not as one claiming dominion through fear, but as one claiming it through understanding. "I do not rule by birth alone," he said. "I rule by the strength of survival, the clarity of perception, and the courage to rise when the world has abandoned you." The council bowed their heads. Soldiers, villagers, and surviving alphas outside felt the shift, a new rhythm pulsing through the land, steady and unyielding. The pack, once fractured, now found a center, a force they could follow without doubt. At night, beneath the silver gaze of the moon, he walked the walls of the fortress, listening. Not just for threats, but for life, every heartbeat, every whisper, every tremor in the earth that told him the kingdom was breathing again. He thought of the forest that had raised him, of the rogue she-wolf who had saved him, and of the father who had feared weakness above all else. "I am not afraid," he whispered to the night. "I never will be." The moonlight shimmered across his silver eyes, reflecting both the past that tried to destroy him and the future he now held. And for the first time in a lifetime of shadows and exile, the kingdom and its heir were whole. The wind carried his name through the mountains, through forests, through valleys where whispers of his survival had once been just rumors. Now it was legend. And beneath the silver light, the heir, the boy who had been abandoned, the boy who had survived, the boy who had risen, became not just a king, but the promise of a new reign. The kingdom had been tested. The boy had been forged. And the moon watched, merciful, eternal, as a new era began.